I'm Caden, here with my brother,
Cal,
and you're listening to Eating W's.
eat the W.
That's a W. Let's eat one. Let's eat one. That's a W.
So, on today's episode of Eating W's, Cal and I are going to update you on the news from the prior week and give our reactions to that. And then we're going to talk about some of our most anticipated matchups for each of our favorite teams. Of course, me liking the Vikings and Cal with the Packers, respectively. So, the schedule just dropped a little bit ago, of course. So now we know not only who we're facing, which we already knew, but when we're going to be facing those people and what our primetime games and stuff like that. So we're just going to give our top 3 games that we are excited to watch. Now, jumping straight into the news, it is another down week. I mean,
Another
the roller...
down week. There's a little bit, though.
With the roller coaster of news analogy that I used last week, this is a doom drop. This is like straight down. It is rough.
There's a handful of items.
There's a little bit, I guess, but you'd love to see a little bit more. Yeah.
It might pick up a little bit when training camp starts.
Certainly, yeah. Once training camps and OTAs really get rolling, I think it will pick up. So starting off with a little bit of sad news, actually. Former Vikings cornerback and Cardinals cornerback Jeff Gladney dies in a car accident at the age of 25. So it's pretty crazy to not only have one NFL player dying this offseason, with, of course, Haskins dying a month or two back, but now we have 2, which is just
very
such
bizarre.
a weird thing. Kind of puts things in perspective to think of.
Terrible timing, I mean, obviously it always is, but he was just getting his life back on track and, got signed by the Cardinals to a 2-year deal after some off-the-field trouble, so that's a terrible situation. It was just an unfortunate car accident from what I've heard.
Certainly. So thoughts to his friends and family, of course. And then moving on past the sad stuff to more of the actual news, David Njoku gets a 4-year extension worth about $56 million with the Browns. So seems like that after that extension, they're going to actually use him. I mean, they used him a little bit his rookie year and then almost replaced him with Austin Hooper.
Yeah, Austin Hooper, and then they drafted Harrison Bryant also. So they used the top 3. They got a top 3 tight end, that they use.
Yeah.
Along with also having Amari Cooper and Deshaun Watson. Where'd they find all this money?
It's actually something to think about, though, is when Deshaun Watson was really doing well in Houston with the Texans, he really made his money going to his tight end. Yeah. Darren Fells, who was his tight end at the time, it was the peak of Darren Fells' career when he was with Deshaun Watson.
Really been in the same sense losing Watson.
Yeah, so maybe we'll see kind of like a consistent 2, maybe even 3 tight end set there in Cleveland and let Watson really work with his improvising skills.
3 tight ends, 2 wide receivers. That's all they got.
That's pretty much all they need, especially when you got 2 running backs like they do with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. And then moving on to some signings, the Raiders signed former Packer defensive lineman Tyler Lancaster. Just a little interesting there. I always kind of liked Tyler Lancaster.
I knew that he was going to be gone when we signed Jerron Reed, kind of as his replacement.
We just didn't need him anymore.
And then obviously drafted Devontae Wyatt and I can't remember his name now, but another kid out of Miami in the 7th round. Yeah. But so we got a number of defensive linemen right now, and I just think Lancaster was the odd man out.
Yep. Well, Las Vegas continuing to bolster that defensive line, which with all the quarterbacks added in their division, they need a bolstered defensive line. Moving on to the Texans, who I just talked about a little bit ago. They signed former Cardinals cornerback Fabian Monroe to a 1-year deal, which he's about middle of the pack age, so this isn't like a crazy good signing. Oh, it might be Morrow. I think you're right. I think it's Moreau. But I actually really like this signing for the Texans. I mean, they're just picking up a lot of really solid, under-the-radar depth players this offseason, which is something they needed because aside from a few kind of bright spots, like Brandon Cooks, just to think one off the top of my head, they had 0 depth. And they're not really picking up any stars, but just that all-around depth is something that kind of makes me think Houston could really surprise some people this year.
They really could. They've got the depth, like you were saying. They signed, remember last year they signed a ragtag group of free agents. It was just whoever wanted to play, just come down to Houston, you'll get a starting job. So now they're adding to that with a bunch of veteran signings.
Yeah, so we'll see how that works out for them. And then finally, and probably one of the bigger signings from this past week, The Bucks find themselves a little bit of an Ndamukong Suh replacement with former Bears defensive lineman Akeem Hicks on a 1-year, $10 million deal. So now the Bears got rid of him when they first started with Poles. Ryan Poles kind of cleaned house, and now he's been sitting on the free agency market for so long, everyone was saying they think he's going to go here, here, here. And no one really talked about Tampa that I saw.
No,
so I think it's...
especially after they drafted Logan Hall.
Exactly. So it's pretty interesting that he ended up going to Tampa. But, maybe he's just ring chasing.
Yeah,
you spend your whole career in Chicago. Ring chasing is something you're going to want to do.
Yeah.
You never did much of that in Chicago.
Yeah, I didn't get much of a chance to. So,
but we'll see if he can run down that ring there in Tampa Bay. So now moving on past the news into some of our most anticipated games for our favorite team in this upcoming 2022 NFL season. And I'll let Callan take it first.
So for the first game, and it's probably the most anticipated maybe of the whole NFL year, and it's Green Bay versus the Dallas Cowboys. Mike McCarthy's homecoming to Lambeau Field. We get to see Rodgers versus McCarthy and decide who really was the mastermind. I mean, obviously it was Rodgers, but, this is the prove-it game.
Yep, exactly. I mean, we all knew it was Rodgers.
Yeah, two-time MVP. I mean...
even as a Vikings fan, I will 100% say it's Rodgers every single day. But it's still going to be a good matchup either way because McCarthy's got himself a new quarterback in offense that's carrying him with Dak and all those people there in Dallas, so...
It'll be a hell of a game.
It'll be a really good game. Probably going to be an offensive shootout, but at the same time, those are two really good defenses.
That's the game where it's going to be 10-3.
Exactly. Sometimes you expect
an
offensive shootout, and then these teams prepare for that, and their defenses prepare for that all game.
Especially
and then it
Green
flips
Bay's
the script,
defense.
yeah, and it just becomes like a 10-17 game by the time it's all said and done. But either way, I feel like it's going to be a really close game and a really good game. So moving on to my favorite game for this season, I got a little bit of a shocker here. I got the Vikings London game against the Saints week 4. Now, of course, it's so fun to go against the Saints as a Vikings fan because of the 2009 conference championship game with Favre, and then you got the
your
27
non-division rival.
Exactly. Then you got the 2017 playoff game with the Minneapolis Miracle. You got the 2019 playoff game in overtime with Kyle Rudolph catching that touchdown. So there's just a lot of games to look back on.
I still say he pushed off.
He might have pushed off a little, but let him play. Come on, let him play. That's what I always say. But no, this is going to be a really fun game. And then just to add on to that being one of my favorite matchups overall, it's a London game and pretty early in the year, so that's cool. And then it's funny because we always made fun of the London games and they were always really crappy matchups. But I feel like this one's going to be a pretty good matchup.
What's that say for your...
Exactly. We'll see. I mean, with Winston and the Vikings being so inconsistent, there's a chance that it's just another London game.
It's a new year. Maybe the London game will be the game of the week this year.
Exactly. God, I hope so. Because the Vikings have one, and I think the Packers have one later against the Giants, too.
Yep.
But yeah, I'm really excited to face the Saints again and make up for that Kamara game last year.
That'll be a good matchup, especially in London.
Yep.
And then for my second game, my second most anticipated game for Green Bay, it is Green Bay at Buffalo. And that is going to be Rodgers versus Josh Allen. Now, it's going to be tough going into Buffalo, but that's going to be a hell of a test for this Green Bay Packer team, not only on offense, but on defense as well, to see how they do against Josh Allen.
Yeah, that's going to be a hell of a matchup. If you want to prove yourself, you're going to prove yourself against a really good team like the Buffalo Bills because they are all around really good. And you're going into Buffalo.
Yeah.
And we might as well just jump right into my number 2 because I promise the video isn't skipping. Your video isn't lagging.
No.
My number 2 anticipated matchup is the Vikings at the Buffalo Bills week 10. And I mean, I can pretty much mimic exactly what he said.
Kind of thing.
If you really want to prove yourself as a team, you got to beat some of the best teams in the league. So if we can go into Buffalo and pick up a win against them, that's really going to push ourselves as not a marquee team per se, maybe like it would for the Packers, but it's going to be like, damn, the Vikings aren't as bad. They aren't this laughing stock like they usually seem to be. They've really turned themselves around. And by week 10, I really like this for the Vikings because that'll give us enough time to really establish and find what we are as a team with this new coaching staff and new regime. So if we're going to have a time to turn it around and some growing pains earlier in the season, that week 7, 8, 9, 10 is really when you're going to have to prove
Is that a
yourself.
primetime game?
It is not.
It could be flexed into one.
I would not be surprised if the Vikings
Very
picked
much
up a
could
little
be.
bit.
Green Bay at Buffalo is a Sunday nighter.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So
Yeah.
that's going to be a really good one to watch. Both of them will be good
Certainly.
to watch.
So now we will go on to your number
For
3.
my number 3, the third most anticipated game, it is Brady versus Rodgers. Green Bay versus Tampa. I mean, we get another chance to see these two icons go head to head, and you get another chance for Rodgers to make it right. Right now, I believe that Brady is leading right now in the head-to-head matchups, so he gets a chance to tie, and then possibly, meeting in the playoffs, go ahead of Brady.
Ooh,
So,
that'd be pretty fancy.
Just a
That'd be-
double anticipation there.
That's a lot to unpack there. That'd be crazy. I don't know. Did you say it was in Tampa or in Green Bay?
It is in Tampa, I believe.
In Tampa. That's a rough game then, because, prior history has been showing a different story. But
70% sure on that. I'll have to double check it, but I think it's in Tampa.
Yeah, the Packers haven't done great the last few times they faced Tampa, at least in the playoffs. I think they've lost in the regular season now that I think about
they
it
lost
too.
the regular season and the playoffs. So.
But Father Time comes eventually. There's no such thing
We'll
as an
see.
ageless wonder.
I don't know.
I don't know if
Brady's
it'll
pushing
happen
it.
this year.
Both of these guys are pushing it.
And both of them are pushing it. I think Brady might have kind of pushed his boundaries with that whole I'm retiring, I'm not retiring thing. He's really taken a risk because
Favre-like.
it's very Favre-like. That's exactly what I was about to say. And, you kind of hate to see that when someone has such a storied career and they push it too far and just make themselves look like a fool towards the end. Ben Roethlisberger. But now he finally retired. But this is Brady. If Brady has even a half decent year this year, he's got to just retire. You got to retire with some dignity. He's seen people like Roethlisberger, like Breeze, even like Favre, who push it too far and then they just end up looking silly. So I think he took a big risk coming back this year, and if he can squeak out one more decent season, I think he should go out on top because he still kind of would be.
We'll see. I'd like to see Rodgers knock him off.
But regardless, that was a little bit of a tangent.
Have Rodgers be his retirement game.
That's exactly what I was going to say, is I think that leaves the door open for the Packers because Brady might not do bad, but I think he'll definitely have a little bit of a drop. So this is Rodgers' chance to finally get that one up on him, like you said.
We'll see.
And then for my third and final game, I have the Vikings home game against the New England Patriots on Thanksgiving night. Now this will be a really fun matchup, of course, another AFC East matchup, so it's always fun to go against an AFC team since it rotates and you only get to face the team once every 4 years, so that's always really cool. And then the Patriots are a young developing team, and this one's going to be on week 12, only 2 weeks after that Bills game, so like I mentioned, we'll have found ourselves by then and really prove if we're going to be a good team or not. And I think the Patriots are a still pretty young team and still kind of a new little bit with Mac Jones being at the helm. So by then they will really have established themselves too. So hopefully, especially for the Vikings' sake, you'll kind of be two juggernauts going against each other at that point. Being a primetime game on Thanksgiving night will be really cool. So
Prime
just
time on Thanksgiving.
a lot of factors coming together to make that game really cool and really special, and I'm hoping it lives up to the hype a little bit and we get to see, a 5-interception Mac Jones game. But so that was our top 3 most anticipated games. A little bit of a shorter episode this week because there's just not much to talk about. Next week we'll probably talk a little more about training camps and how the OTAs especially went, because those will be wrapping up and training camp will begin to start up. So
around the corner.
Right around the corner, that'll start being fun. So thank you all so much for watching. Make sure to stay tuned in until that. And until next time, don't forget
to eat the W.